Hello there, one and all, and drum roll, please. Welcome to episode 300 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, coming to you live from YouTube. And again, this is exactly what I said the last time we had this person doing an interview with us in the studio. There's not going to be any lengthy preamble. Number one, because we want to get as much time as possible asking him questions, but also number two, because this is actually part two. We had part one of this interview just over a week ago. So please, and I should actually say, the last time we interviewed him 2 years ago, that was episode 100. So the stars have aligned, and now we've got episode 300 of Love at First Scent with Renaud Salmon, a creative director at Amouage, who has stuck around in his office just outside Muscat until quite late, because it's 8:30 p.m. in Muscat, and you can see that the light has dimmed. It's a little bit darker. Is it raining today, though, Renaud?
No, but it's gray, and it's about to rain, I think. So you're quite lucky.
It's about to rain. This will be one of the very, very rare times when I will say to you, please, could you send some rain here? Because I think we could do it with a little bit in the UK. Anyway, lots of people leaving comments already. I still have some questions from all of you viewers left over from last time, but please feel free to pop some questions in the chat, but not just yet. I will tell you when it's okay to do so, because if you pop them in the chat now, then I may miss them. And there are still so many things for us left to talk about. I'm sure we will have absolutely no trouble filling the next hour, and we probably could have enough questions for another 2 hours or so, or 3 hours. And I had the initial questions for this interview all perfectly, nicely, neatly organized and prepared. And then on your social media, a very, very short while ago, Renaud, you dropped a little bit of a bombshell on us, because on your Instagram, you posted a picture of what looked like a very, very interesting find. And then you and I exchanged a few messages with me asking you, what the heck is that stuff? So tell us, you have found literally today in that Amouage office warehouse where you are, you have found something really quite special.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not staged. It was not meant to happen today, but it did. So so actually, we, as you might know, Amouage is going to turn 40 next year. And in that context, I was doing some research about the story of the house. And some people told me there might be stuff in the storage, but you might need to open lots of boxes and so on and all of that. So I walked around and we saw a box that looked quite old. Not that I'm saying the story, it sounds a bit fake, but it's really how it happened, and that box was high.
I mean, I'm thinking as well, because you're not given to what am I saying, to exaggeration or to hyperbole. But when that social media thing came up, and then when we exchanged the messages, I thought, did he really find them today?
But actually we did. So what we found were actually a box full of those.
Oh my goodness. So, you have to tell people what they are, because some people may not know.
Sure. So if you don't know, so this is the very first Amouage bottle. And actually I'm trying to rebuild a little bit the archive of the house. And I'm trying to understand a little bit what happened in the very first years of Amouage, because I got recently quite some questions from people, from journalists and so on, because there are so many things being said online about the very beginning of Amouage. And obviously you might have heard about the story. So it was originally a gift that was gifted by His Majesty the Sultan Qaboos as a gift actually to important people visiting the country. And then people went back to their home country, and then it became at some point sellable because of the demand for that product. Now, some questions were, so was the first bottle made out of gold and crystal? Was it actually named gold in the beginning, or was it named something else? Because you might have seen many things. And for now, I'm putting the pieces together. But what is really interesting, actually, what I understood recently is that, so the very first bottle, so what was made by, designed by the house of Aspreys. And it's made out of silver that is gold plated. So it's this one. However, the very interesting thing about it is that it's actually not really a bottle. It's more a shell or a case, as you can see. And it came, so it's really like a metallic case like this. And it came, it's quite big. It came with a round box like this as well. And this round box contains, so actually a refill. So yeah.
Hang on, let me zoom in on you again. What does it say? Amouage.
So it says Amouage. It just says Amouage eau de toilette. So we have those for women, and I showed actually the women's bottle, and we have the same for men's as well. And so this bottle actually goes. So you remove this, then you put it inside the case, and then you put the spray at the top. So
this is crazy. And if we suddenly see a whole load of vintage Amouage bottles on eBay, we will know where they came from, Renaud.
Well, and the plan is for us actually to keep them because it's obviously quite valuable. But so I'm pretty confident that the very first actually Amouage fragrances were named Amouage eau de toilette. Two of them, so a men's one and a woman's one. Then a few years later, so.
Now, hang on. With those few years later, you must have sprayed this stuff that you found. How does it smell?
I did. So I sprayed it, and I think so. First of all, it's quite close to the current version of Gold, which is, I mean, in my opinion, it shows the care that has been given to that fragrance over 4 decades of history. But it obviously feels a little bit, softer and rounder and so on because I think it has aged. But it has not turned bad at all. So it's quite, I mean, it was kept in the dark and so on and all of that, so in the right conditions. But it's quite, it's quite good from my point of view.
But how did you find it, Renaud? Because, okay, the Amouage factory, the warehouse, it's not a tiny place, but it's also not like some huge, expansive warehouse that, you need to drive around in a car, and it's not that big. Where was this thing hiding?
I mean, it was quite high in a corner, and I think Amouage has been so busy with its development and so on. It's probably one of the first time that we really step back and try really to look at the archives and so on. So I mean, I think some people knew about it, maybe, but. Yeah.
So, but anyway, I interrupted you. You started telling us about what happened a few years later.
Yeah. So a few years later, I think actually that bottle was sold at quite a high price point, and then a few years later, so this bottle came out. It was made in crystal, and then with silver, gold-plated accessories. And the bottle says, I don't know if you will be able to see.
Oh, yes, you can see that. No, we can see that perfectly. Wow.
Amouage Crystal. And if you look at the boxes, so for the men's and women's fragrances, so it actually says something slightly different, Amouage Crystal and Gold. And if you look at the back, it says,
oh, yeah,
Crystal and Gold, Gentlemen's Eau de Toilette, and you have the same, and I think for women, it says Ladies Eau de Toilette. So probably the second name of what would become Gold was Amouage Crystal and Gold, referring to the materials of the bottle. The fragrance, I smell the fragrance. It smells exactly the same as the first one. So wow. Exactly the same fragrance. It just went from Amouage Eau de Toilette to Amouage Crystal and Gold, Ladies Eau de Toilette. And then, so that bottle was not refillable anymore. So the first one was really a case and so on. The second one is not refillable anymore. And then a few years later, so you notice a change in terms of logo of Amouage. Yes. And then I think for the first time we see the word gold really appearing on the box. And then the bottle is quite similar to the previous one I showed. The fragrance looks a bit, it's not as dark as the previous one. So I think, it became dark with the years. So this one is not as old as the previous ones. And I think that's when actually the fragrance became gold, and that's the name, that we are using today. This one still says Eau de Toilette. Currently, we refer to it as eau de parfum, and I don't have any indication, that says that the concentration changed or something like that. So I think at some point there was a decision to change the name from eau de toilette to eau de parfum. That's a little bit what happened today at Amouage, digging in the archives and trying to
just a regular day at work, right?
Yeah.
Are you also going to, because I don't know if I can ask, but are you able to show that kind of slightly purple one that you showed as well?
So this is a bit of a curious one. So
because that was great. What is that?
So this one says eau d'Amouage. So we found many things. Eau d'Amouage. And I think there is a period in time at Amouage when, I don't know, it felt a little bit to me like Amouage, I don't know, at some kind of designer fragrances inspiration a little bit.
This is Amouage does Britney Spears.
I mean, and I think I saw that fragrance on Fragrantica. But it's a bit weird. I'll try to open it.
Don't break it. Don't break it now.
I mean, the cap is made out of plastic, so.
Oh God! Gee, no wonder they discontinued.
I mean, you can see it's really interesting because the pump is of like purple color and so on. It looks a bit, I don't know, like it has something very designer to it.
Yes. Confusing times for the creative direction of the brand at that time, maybe.
I think so, and we don't talk much about it, I think we go from gold to, to, I don't know, like to epic and stuff like that, and there's a little bit of a weird time in between.
Who was with you when you found these boxes? What was the reaction of your colleagues?
Well, I mean, we were quite amazed about it. So I was with Mark. You might know Mark is our community manager, and we were quite surprised about what we found. And what we are going to do, we are going, I think, to clean all of those bottles. So we'll try to find the right people to clean them. We'll try to take beautiful pictures of them to make sure that we build some kind of professional archive of it. And maybe it's going to be part of a book or something like that for the anniversary of Amouage next year.
Amazing. Somebody called Iliona, who I think earlier was saying that she's watching from Brussels, says that bottle gives her the vibes of Ted Lapidue's Fantasme, which I don't remember at all. But you see, that's what's great about this audience. They will immediately just go, oh yes, that reminds me of that one. Wow, gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that, Renaud. That is genuinely exciting, and we look forward to seeing what you're going to do with that for the 40th anniversary. So, let us go back. There was a kind of major topic that I wanted to have a chance to address with you in part one. We didn't get a chance to because we moved on to other things, and then I thought, okay, well, let's save it for part two. And this is about something else that you are doing for Amouage, with Amouage, that is genuinely exciting and could lead to all sorts of things. And it is to do with this, hence the T-shirt for today. When I went over to Oman and spent some time with you, I was really fortunate in that I got to see with you a little bit sort of inland from Muscat, about maybe, I don't know, what was it, like an hour's drive or something like that, some rose fields, and you took us to one particular rose harvest. So maybe you can take the story from there of what is the significance of that particular rose field and that particular rose harvest to Amouage, and how did it come to be significant to Amouage?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important part of the history of Amouage, because the story actually says that at the very beginning, gold was created by Guy Robert, and it would include 3 ingredients that would come from Oman. One of them being obviously frankincense, that Oman is known for. The second one being the rock rose. So it's a name that is given to a specific type of rose that grows in Oman. And then the third one being ambergris, because Oman has a very long coast that has the tendency actually to get some ambergris. So when it comes to the rock rose, obviously, those are roses that grow quite high in altitude, so close to 2,000 meters of elevation. And the harvest is very, very small. It's a little bit, if you're familiar with Taif, it's a little bit like a very small version of Taif. It's more or less the same altitude. And the rose has quite a similar character in a way. So it was originally used in the very first versions of gold, and then progressively, because of obviously the very small size of the harvest, and because Amouage was growing, it became actually less and less part of the formulas of the fragrances. And it became a little bit more, this kind of symbolic ingredient that we were trying to add actually to some fragrances, but that were not used in significant quantities in the fragrance creations, I would say. So the idea was actually to try to understand if we could develop, that business, because it's quite an important actually part of the economy of the villages in the mountains. We did not want it to be just like, I don't know, a window for Amouage to say, hey, this is our rose and so on, but it's, again, just an advertising and so on. The goal was really to try to understand, okay, could we partner with local people? Could we just make it something significant and so on for those villages and also for Amouage? So when you came, we were actually in the middle of the season, and we got the chance to pick the roses and so on, but also to distill the rose. I think we distilled around 200 kilos, if I'm not wrong. And I think you could see like the tiny amount of oil that we got, which made it really interesting, because that there are mostly two products of rose that are used in perfumery, so rose oil and rose absolute, and the essential oil is actually a very, very small amount, I think, compared to the absolute, because the yield is quite low, and there are not many people doing rose oil anymore. So we really wanted to do rose oil, and we wanted the purest version of it. So usually when you do rose oil, you do the steam distillation, and you go through a process that is called cohobation, which is actually you bring back the rose water actually in the distillation in order to increase the yield, and you do it several times and so on. However, there is a belief, particularly in those villages in Oman, that if you only do it once, you get really the purest version of the oil. Obviously a very, very low yield, but you get really like a beautiful quality of oil. And then the byproduct becomes rose water with actually a very high amount of oil left, because it has not been distilled several times. So that's what we've been doing. It was I think the very first time that we tried to get that organized at a larger scale. So somehow bringing together the work of several villages in one place, and distilling every morning the harvest of the day during 2 to 3 weeks, because that's more or less the time of the season. And I think the outcome is quite. We did not smell the outcome together, but it's quite special.
And what are you going to do with it? Is the big question, I guess.
Well, yes. So obviously, it's part of some fragrances. So I'm not planning to change the formulas and so on. So it's it's still going to be the same and so on. But then I would love to work on a creation that contains actually I could say an overdose of it, or a high amount of it. as opposed to, just a drop of it as a symbolic ingredient and so on. So that means either potentially an attar, so something that could be quite pure around the rose note, or a fragrance creation that contains a significant amount of it. So right now, obviously, it needs to go through several stages, to analyze the quality of it, to really check the profile, particularly when it comes to allergens and so on, to make sure that we can use it actually in a high dosage. But this is the plan for the months to come, because we don't have to use it, like immediately. We have a little bit of time to really decide what we are going to do with it.
And I know you haven't decided what you're going to do yet, but if it's really, really not IFRA compliant, do you think maybe you might just do something for the local market, or?
Yeah, I think so. That's one of the. I mean,
Okay.
When you smell, that oil, it's so beautiful on its own that I'm really like I'm kind of wondering, does it even? I mean, it probably makes sense for some people to mix it with other things, but I find it so beautiful as it is that I'm very tempted to just offer it as a pure oil, because in the end it's a scent that not many people smelled. So, for example, when I'm meeting with perfumers and so on, I'm trying actually to have them smell that specific quality of rose oil because it's quite unique in its profile.
So what makes it unique? Like if I had some here now, like if I had a sort of, I don't know, a Bulgarian oil, a Moroccan oil, and this one, what would I be able to smell that's a little bit different?
So, I mean, my theory, and I mean, it's not only mine, but it feels like the roses somehow, their oil actually reflects the character of where they grow and their environment and so on. So, it's a rose that grows in an environment that is really exposed to lots of temperature differences, to the wind. It's quite it's quite mineralic, very rocky as well, and so on. So it grows in an environment that's from what I can smell, actually, it kind of reflects the environment. It's a rose that's very vibrant, very mineralic, very citrusy as well. It's very interesting because it's extremely bright for a rose oil. I find it extremely bright. Does not smell at all like artichoke, because sometimes rose oil can smell like artichoke. It's quite, I mean, I find it striking in its beauty because it feels very vulnerable, but at the same time extremely vertical and piercing in a way. So I mean, quite unique from that point of view.
Gosh, I hope we'll get a chance to smell it. And also, am I right in saying that the people who own and run these rose fields, they are really, really happy to become part of the Amouage story again, aren't they?
Definitely, and that's the plan. Amouage is totally committed to be the flag of Oman in everything we do, and also give back to the country. So for us, if we can actually source more ingredients in Oman, and if we can develop the local businesses and so on, I think that makes total sense.
And in a completely different part of the country, sort of as if you're heading south, I think I'm right in saying, where you get to a much more tropical area that is affected by the same monsoons that affect India. You've also gone there to check out what's happening with the frankincense.
Correct.
So what is there anything particular there that might lead to an interesting development?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a very interesting quality of frankincense. It's called Boswellia sacra, and we are particularly keen on some qualities of it. We've been using frankincense in a lot of Amouage fragrances. We are very keen actually on trying to find ways to develop a palette of qualities of frankincense for our perfumers, that is going to be very rich in order to give more diversity to the character of our fragrances. And we can do that by selecting specific, qualities of frankincense, so specific grades. Can do that also using different extraction methods, and it gives really like a full palette of of frankincense in a way to the perfumers. And it's something really interesting because if you think about it, you might think, okay, we list sometimes frankincense on our product description and so on. But actually, the way we think about it is like, okay, which quality, which grade, which extraction are we using? Because in the end, we have many options on the table.
Right. So all this talk of rose oils and maybe offering it as a pure oil kind of neatly brings us onto the subject of your attars. And lots of people had questions about these. I guess maybe some people still haven't had a chance to try them because they're not as widely available as lots of other things. So for the people who aren't aware, a little while ago, a good few months ago now actually, you released, I think I'm right in saying 6 attars. Certainly there are 6 in this little set. And I think you made a decision at some point that a few of them would be traditional attars in the sense of their main ingredients. They're all traditional attars, I believe, in the meaning that all they contain is scented material. So they don't have unscented solvents or just fillers to bulk it up or anything like that. Okay, I can see you're nodding, so that's fine. So we've got a rose, we've got an oud, I suppose, which the sort of traditional attar materials. But there was also an orris, there was also a vanilla. So what made you think, okay, I'm going to go out there a little bit and do an iris attar?
It's a good one. I think it goes down to a questioning about the definition of the attars. Is it a technical one, or is it more of cultural one in a way, and something that has to do with countries and with fragrance profiles. So to indeed, as you mentioned, so the very, very first intention was to be true to the technicality of and the technical definition of what an attar is and what it's not. And we already had some questions at this stage, like, is an attar by definition something made out of 100% natural materials or not? So this is already like a very first question and a decision that we need to take. And the decision I took was to say, actually, we believe that it can be made out of naturals, but also we can use some synthetics if we think that it adds actually value from a creative point of view. However, as you mentioned, it needs to be 100% pure scented materials. So definitely not something at, 20% concentration with 80% of a oily base or something like that. Then we go into the discussion about the style. And I have to say that, if you want to create attars that are compliant with international regulations, at the very beginning, people were telling me sometimes, well, it's not possible because you cannot work at 100% and meet the international regulations. But the reality is that the regulations actually, they limit the percentage of each ingredient or of each allergen, but they don't tell you that you cannot work at 100%. So as a consequence, the perfumers I worked with were able to create formulas at 100% by adding actually ingredients until they reach the limit, and then moving to another ingredient, and so on. So the consequence, I think, in terms of style, is that if you compare traditional attars that don't comply with international regulations, usually they are made out of a small amount of ingredients. And so, which means that usually they would be perceived as quite bold in a way, because they would have big blocks that you can easily, smell most of the time. On the other hand, the attars we worked on, because we need to comply with international regulations, by definition, they are made probably, they are a bit more complex and so on. And they might feel a little bit more faceted because, they contain actually more fragrance facets. So you can already notice a little bit of a difference of style that is driven by the technicality of the work. Now, after that, I really wanted to explore, as you said, traditional fragrance construction, but also I wanted to see actually, well, it's quite unusual to do Oris attars. It's quite unusual to do vanilla attars. Why not? And that's also why we decided to have some of them that feel a little bit more traditional from my point of view, and some of them that feel quite out there.
And what's the response been amongst the people who really, really love attars and know attars? What's the response been, for example, to the things like the iris and the vanilla?
I think it differs. Some people, they are actually quite curious and they send me feedback and we exchange quite a lot saying, hey, it's quite interesting, I'm not used to it and so on. Like, could we push it further and all of that? But then some people were also, well, they don't smell like attars, because then you realize that what they consider as an attar is maybe not the technical aspect of it, but the usual signatures that you get out of those attars from the region.
Oh, it is fascinating. And this isn't a question, but I'm going to put this comment up from Woozy, because it just shows that you can't control you can never ever control what happens with your products, right? Woozy says, my friend diluted 6 mils of the Oris attar in some perfumer's alcohol to make an EDT EDP. The result was actually quite interesting and nice. So there you go.
Yeah, that makes it quite an expensive and chic EDT. So, but yeah, why not,
There you go. Okay, at the half-hour mark, I should say that you are all watching episode 300 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, and we have in our virtual studio today the Creative Experience Officer or Creative Director at Amouage, Renaud Salmon. I know a lot of you have got questions that you want to put to him, so if you want to send those now, and as always, if you would care to say where it is in the world that you're watching from, it's always fun, it's always interesting to know where in the world you're watching from. Some questions from last time. This one was from Benji, and he says, well, I assume it's a he. Yeah, it probably is a he. I can't remember now. What are the effects of the 2021 IFRA regulations on the Amouage portfolio? And I'm only going to ask you this question, Renaud, if you can be fairly concrete in your answer, because, obviously you're going to say something like, yes, we had to look at the formulas and some things had to be changed and some things couldn't, Are you able to actually tell us in any specific terms what the effects were?
Yeah, I think it impacted 1/3 of the Amouage portfolio, which is quite a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, some of them it impacted, the majority, it impacted less than 0.5% of the formula. So again, that might sound scary, that IFRA 49, impacted 1/3 of the portfolio of Amouage, but most of the time it's a very, very small portion of the formula. I paid particular attention to the reformulations, all of them, and I was very happy about how they came out. There were a few fragrances that were slightly more impacted, but I would say not in a bad way,
Reflection. How can you say not in a bad way, though? Come on, I'm going to challenge you on that. Why not? How not in a bad way?
Because I think, it's not about downgrading the quality, and it's not changing the character, because we found, sometimes I think IFRA could force you to really get rid of a beautiful ingredient, and here, it's about, mostly it has been about Lilial and Liral, which are green synthetics, and because all of the other ones, we would not reach the levels of the restrictions. So that was mostly it. And what you the challenge is to find, I think, from what I understood, is to find alternative ingredients that have the same performance when it comes to the greenness of it. And that's really, that was really the challenge. It was really about the performance of the green notes that creates, some kind of verticality and so on. We had that a little bit in Reflection Man. We had that a little bit in Jubilation 25, and in most of the cases, I took actually that opportunity also to try to address things that, I had read that people had lost over time on some of the fragrances and so on. So in a way, that was also a good excuse, or that was a good sign also to tell me, well, okay, actually take that opportunity to try really to go back as much as possible to the original fragrances if you can. And for some of them, and we might not even communicate about it, but for some of them, we also increased the concentration because I really did not want to make sure, I did not want to lose performance of the fragrances. Okay. So in the end, I'm quite confident about them, and actually for some of them, I'm really waiting actually for the new products to hit the market, because I think they are. I mean, I prefer the scent profile than the old one. We are talking minor changes, but I think I think they accumulate over time and so on. So it's really important to get it right.
Actually, as it turns out, Benji is watching. And Benji says, when I asked the question, my hope was that the reformulations would have been a good thing, as some of us weren't thrilled with some of the previous formulations, and sounds like you have done that. So there you go. Well, and then Benji says, look forward to trying them. So, of course, the next question is, when will the new ones hit the market? I suppose it's just going to be a gradual thing if they will filter through, won't they?
It's gradual. They've been in production since the beginning of the year, and sometimes it depends really, where you buy your fragrances and if they are fast-selling stores or not. It really depends. So it's difficult to predict. But I guess in fast-selling stores you could already have them right now on shelf. Okay. But some of them might take a bit longer.
Brilliant, thank you. Loads and loads of questions over the course of the last few days, actually, on my social media and everything. Loads of questions about the library collection. Now, we talked about the latest addition to the library collection in the previous episode. By the way, if anybody's watching, there is a link to part 1 in the video description below. We talked about the new one, which is Opus 14, Royal Tobacco, composed by Cécile Zarokian. But there are lots of questions along the lines of, oh my goodness, what's happened with the other ones? There are only a few left in the library collection. What are the others going to be discontinued? So just to give one person who signed themselves M. Podgorski said, why would you drop such an artistic and exciting range as the library collection with those fantastic and eye-catching bottles? So I guess to kind of put all of those questions together, can you give us a kind of brief summary of actually what is happening with the library collection sense? Are the other ones gone?
Yeah.
What's the state of play?
So it's a very good point, and I respect actually.
This is just come.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where can we take it? So we need to distinguish, what is personal taste and what is actually, another type of discussion, because when we talk about the bottles, when we talk about the creative direction and so on in general, I think my intention is really to reflect as much as possible the reinforced focus on what I see in Oman, from an aesthetic point of view, and from really I think that Amouage should really, again, portray the beauty of Oman, portray the identity of Oman as much as possible. And I felt, and I think I mentioned it a few times before, that Amouage had moved away a little bit from its roots, and I've been trying for the past 3 years to bring it back to its roots. So I've been trying to push actually, and to really propose, the bottles that to me feel the most iconic and the most representative of Oman, a color palette that I see and treatments that I see every day around me in Oman, but trying to do it in the modern way, because also Oman is evolving and is changing and so on. And there are also some purely, I would say, practical reasons. And one of them being the fact that the bottles of the library collection were not very stable. So we had to use a base and so on. It was a little bit problematic for some retail partners and so on. So
not just for retail partners, but also for certain Madame Persolaises with, I mean, that is true. Those library collection bottles do fall over very, very easily.
So we felt like that would be a nice upgrade from that point of view. It does not mean that, we cannot handle 3 different bottles or something like that, and there might be, new creations coming in the future also from a bottle point of view and so on, but not for now. When it comes to the choice of the fragrances, I mean, first of all, I see that as a starting point, to rebuild the library collection, and not as, like a definitive delisting. And I mean, I'm not trying to, to shrink the library collection to just 4 products or 5 products, and that's it. I'm really not starting from that angle. I'm starting from, okay, I would like to rebuild it properly. I would love actually more people to know about the library collection. And it's something that we've noticed, particularly as Amouage is developing. We've seen lots of our retail partners who would love to have the library collection, but who could not, for example, start with, the 13 references, the whole collection, because it's quite complex. I think if you've been following Amouage since the beginning of the library collection, you've probably grown with it and you're familiar with the range. But if you imagine someone totally new trying to understand the range of 13 numbers or 11 plus 2 fragrances, that's a bit complex. So I decided to create a small selection of 4 fragrances that I find very canonical of, what the library collection is all about. And again, we are only talking about fragrances moving to the new bottles. Most of the other references are still available in the old bottle in a lot of point of sales. And when I talk, to some of the salespeople and so on, they tell me, well, actually, they might still be there for quite some time, because again, we think that there are quite some of them available on the market. Now the question will be, well, what happens if they sell out? Do they move to the new platform, which I don't exclude? So if there is big demand for Opus 11, it might move at some point to the new platform. When we feel, that also the old bottles have been sold. Or we might also create new ones that are going to bring something different and something new. But I agree that some of the fragrances that, for now remain in the old bottle are quite interesting, and I mean, they're quite unique.
No, absolutely. A lot of them are. And kind of in a similar vein, a few people asking, including DJ, will the original Attars ever return in any form?
So the original Attars are available in Oman.
Okay.
So they are. So they are not IFRA compliant, so we cannot export them. But I think the work that needs to be done on those is really, making sure that they remain consistent to the original formula, that the quality of the ingredients is still very consistent and so on, because I think some people have noticed variations of quality, maybe, or of character over the years. And some people have read, comments about, they are not what they were or something like that. And then some people saying, no, actually, they're still quite good and so on. It really depends on the batch you get and all of that. So I think when I have a little bit of time, I'm also going to try to be involved a little bit in those, to make sure that I understand them, because it has not been it has not been a focus of my work in the past 3 years.
Okay. Going off on a little bit of a tangent now, and actually, funnily enough, this is a question that is in a way related to somebody that you mentioned earlier in the broadcast. Now, you mentioned Mark, and you said that you were with Mark when you found this treasure trove. Now, Mark will be known to a lot of us as his Instagram handle, which is Fragrantures of Mark. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And when he was hired as your community manager a little while ago at Amouage, you did a very, very interesting post on your Instagram, something that is a little bit uncharacteristic for you. I'm going to read what you wrote. When you announced the appointment of Mark, you wrote, "It feels like this is only the beginning. I'm convinced that the fragrance community is a solid digital space where talented perfume enthusiasts congregate, and therefore an opportunity for companies that go beyond resumes, Ivy League degrees, and big name backgrounds." Kind of unusually almost political statement from Monsieur Salmon on his Instagram. Is that a problem in the industry as far as your perception goes?
Well,
Everything is going to people with Ivy League degrees and all of that kind of thing.
no, but I have to say that I genuinely believe that some people, some people in the fragrance community have so much passion that I think it can offset actually, I don't know, some to an extent, some prestigious degrees or even some expertise in the industry and so on. And was really a test with Mark. So far, I think Mark, has been doing amazing things and so on. He's learning super fast about Amouage. I hope that people interacting with Amouage can sometimes guess, oh, am I talking to Mark? Because I think we can feel definitely that he's bringing his really like his positive energy behind Amouage. Okay, Mark is there, so
this is the Mark that we're talking about, ladies and gents. He's watching. Hi, Mark. Anyway, sorry, Renaud, carry on.
But it's a good point. And really, I mean, I'm passionate and I have quite some expertise in the industry, but sometimes I see some people who don't have that type of passion, and for them it's a job like another one and so on. And at that point, I think why not looking at what is out there in the fragrance community, particularly when it comes to when you think about roles, about content creation, about copywriting, about editing and so on, because I think there are people extremely talented.
Yeah, which is a very, very diplomatic way of saying that, because you've sort of focused on the positive there, which is fine. You can choose to answer the question that way. But I guess what I was wondering about was, does that constant return to the Ivy League degrees and the big name backgrounds actually cause a kind of stifling of creativity?
I think so. Yeah, I think at some point when you work, I don't know, for more than 10 years in the industry and so on, you start to think that you know the recipes and so on, and you start reapplying things, because it seems like lots of people are afraid of failure as well. So that's why I like the idea to have actually people who are not formatted, and who are going to to feel very grateful also for having the opportunity to work in a beautiful fragrance company, and usually, I mean, it hopefully it results in something a bit more human and passionate and so on. So, okay. And again, I mean, Mark has only been there for 2 months, if I'm not wrong. So we are going to see, but so far, so good.
Oh, there's Renaud the boss coming out there. It's like, don't get too complacent. Thanks very much for that, Renaud. Interesting question, kind of in the vein of things not being too formatted, from Tripti, who says, first of all, hello from South Carolina. Hello to you, Tripti. Thank you for watching. Thank you both for your fabulous work. What surprising cultural shifts in perfume tastes and perceptions have your creations caused among perfume wearers in the West? Do you think your work, Amouage's work, has caused some changes or shifts in the West, maybe even amongst the perfumers that you've spoken to?
It's a good one. It's really a very good question. I think I think the main discussions that I have with perfumers and I mean I believe that the market of fragrances has moved the criteria of long lastingness has become more and more important over the years. Like my theory is that fragrances have become so expensive.
Yeah, but including some of yours.
I guess, yeah. I mean, but I mean, I'm not responsible for that. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I think everyone has become quite expensive. So, and including what we call designer fragrances and so on. And the last thing people want is probably buy an expensive fragrance and not smelling it after 2 hours. So in a way, I think Amouage has proven that you can achieve performance and so on, but not by only being in the in the big codes of the Middle East, and it's not new. It's since the beginning. I think Amouage has been able to strike the balance of some characteristics of Middle Eastern perfumery, particularly the performance, the diffusion, the sillage, the long lastingness, and so on, but at the same time having very international signatures. And I think in a way, I mean, that's probably what people are reacting to, and that's also what is challenging people. When they get in touch with Amouage and so on, what I see very frequently, people tell me, "Hey, but it does not smell like Middle Eastern fragrances." In a way, and it's valid not only for my creations, but also for some earlier creations and so on. If you smell a reflection, I mean, I think it does not smell like a typical Middle Eastern fragrance. However,
agreed. Yeah.
It has those characteristics that you definitely expect from a house that comes from that region.
But to kind of follow on from this, you've on your social media, not so much maybe recently, but maybe earlier in the year, you posted lots and lots of videos and images of bringing very high-profile, big-name perfumers over. People like Dominique Ropion and I can't even remember now, Quentin Biche. Lots of the names that we know. Did any of them have a kind of response where they, for example, went to the rose fields or I don't know where and suddenly thought, oh, wow, I never smelt this facet of this material before, or I never imagined about putting this with that. Were there any responses like that?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, I think the main response was, well, first of all, this is perfumery. Perfumery is all about being out there. It's about being, I mean, it's about interacting in a perfume environment. It's not about exchanging emails. It's not about, I mean, it should not be. And unfortunately, I mean, most of the time, I mean, it's about, this type of relationship and so on. It's about winning briefs and it's about competing and all of that. But in the end, perfumery is about, it's about finding inspiration, together somewhere. And in this case, Oman has been extremely helpful from that point of view, because I think everyone I'm bringing to Oman goes back with a very clear image of what I would like for Amouage, but also a much clearer image about what Oman is all about. And I feel that I'm getting less and less proposals that I find irrelevant, in the context of what I'm doing and so on, which is very rewarding, because it really feels like everyone understands the direction and understands the personalities of fragrances that I'm after.
Which then makes you realize that it's worth putting in all of that time and the resources in doing all of that and kind of educating them in a way.
And I'm learning from them as well. So
Woozy is saying, I look forward to what Biche does for or with Amouage. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, Renaud? Maybe he isn't working on anything for you. We don't know yet, do we? Oh, good answer. Good answer. Now, we are nearly at the end of our time. A huge, huge thank you, Renaud, for giving up not just 1 hour, but 2. We should let you go home soon because it's almost 9:30 there. I had a very, very quick count before we started. And I believe if we count every single individual scent, including what, you know, some people may call flankers or twists or whatever, that I think since you joined, you have released 21 individual things,
Wow.
which is a lot. It's a lot, isn't it? So do you think you need to slow down a bit? Are we going to get any more this year? What are the next few months going to look like?
So it's a good one. I did not realize. I guess, you know, I don't know if you can see behind me, but I'm always like, I don't know. I think that I work a lot, and I love actually to be constantly busy with, you know, working on new stuff and so on. And so the question, I guess, is, am I doing a good editing work in what I'm doing? I mean, to me, it felt natural when I arrived and when I joined that I needed to make some, you know, some change in dynamism of Amouage and trying to, you know, I don't know, that tell a story that's compelling and so on. And the way to do it is probably by, you know, having a few fragrances that define a style and what you're after and so on. But now that...
Should we expect any more releases between now and Christmas?
I mean, one that was announced, Royal Tobacco.
Yes, of course. Which is kind of being, yeah, that's out. We talked about that, didn't we? Yeah.
And I think that's it, which means that if you think about it, because I'm thinking about different types of products as separate things. So in a way, if you think about the classical eau de parfum, well, we will have Royal Tobacco, but then the one before was Silverwood 1 year before. So in my mind, you know, I have this space of that is progressively slowing down. I want to take the time to do the things right and so on. So you're probably right. You know, I think it's time to be very, you know, very, very focused. And
so what do you do? What do you do to relax?
I mean, I try to find new ideas. I walk in the mountains. I discover man. So yeah.
Excellent. Right. Huge thank you to all of you for watching. Thank you for the brilliant questions. Thank you to you. Wishing you all the best for the summer. And also, as I said in the videos yesterday, this is it for Love at First Scent for the next few weeks. So we go off on 300 and then we will be back, I think, at the end of August, beginning of September with more. But massive thanks to you, Renaud, and good luck with everything that you do. I'm sure you will be back on this, or I hope you will be back on this channel. You always have an open invitation to come back to this channel. So all the best and see you soon.
Thank you, Darish. Thank you, everyone.
Not at all. Thank you. Bye.